Hello and welcome to the programme. We continue our series of pre-election interviews with the party leaders. Later we'll be asking David Ford if the Alliance Party might benefit from the Lib Dem bounce. And we'll be reviewing the week on the campaign trail with white coats and volcanic ash making the headlines. First though, the Sinn Féin president is with me. Gerry Adams, let's turn first to the spat over pact or no pact. This is what you wrote to Margaret Ritchie, the SDLP leader. We must ensure that unionism does not increase its share of seats through losses by our parties. If that's not tribal, sectarian appealing, what is it?
It's sensible politics. We're about trying to maximise nationalist representation. It's quite proper for political leaders to meet to discuss this. What is not proper is for an organisation like the Orange Order to broker, to act as midwife in some little orange hall somewhere in Fermanagh or South Tyrone, between all shades, you know, from TUV through the other two main unionist
but there was
parties.
no indication that the Orange Order was involved with Fermanagh and South Tyrone. It did put out an appeal in South Belfast.
No, it was involved in Fermanagh and South Tyrone. I mean, that's a matter of public record. But let me say this, Margaret Ritchie's
not any public record I've been able to find, but
well, Margaret Ritchie's refusal even to meet on that issue, even to come forward and discuss these matters, just was a complete failure of leadership, of good manners. And I think that Alex Maskey showed good leadership when he moved to one side to give the SDLP a clear field.
But why is a unionist pact sectarian and a nationalist one in the interests of all the voters?
Well, a unionist pact which was brought about by the two unionist parties meeting in their own interest would be entirely proper. A unionist pact which is brought about by an order like the Orange Order is clearly sectarian. It's part of the unionist electorate. It's an orange order without mandate whatsoever. And as someone who has worked very hard to try and understand Orangism and to try and ensure that in the time ahead we get more tolerance.
You know that unionists have discussed coming together in Fermanagh, South Tyrone forever. This is not something that the Orange Order has dreamt up in the last few weeks. It's always been on the agenda.
Here you have a young working mother of 3 children living in that area, a really fair and balanced representative of the people there, and everyone appreciates this. The woman who in various opinion polls came out ahead of any unionist representative, and this is about getting rid of her. It isn't about even promoting the union or promoting unionist ideals, it's about getting rid of her.
Which unionist MPs would you accuse of only acting in the interests of their own electorate?
I would say most of them.
Give me some examples.
Well, well, I don't want to get into individual examples.
Yeah, but you're making a case for Michelle Gildernew, who doesn't even represent in Parliament the unionist voters, even the SDLP voters in Fermanagh, South Tyrone.
Well, you look at what Michelle Gildernew has done in that constituency in terms of all the issues affecting that constituency, from hospital services right across roads, and in her capacity as a minister, introducing for people who are disadvantaged.
That's assembly business.
Well,
this is devolved business. This is a Westminster election.
But, well, let me say 2 things about that. Westminster is becoming increasingly unimportant in the scheme of things
Except that it devises all the social policies and gives us all the money. Very unimportant.
Yes, but what we need to do, and what we're doing this, and all the parties agree with this, is taking more and more power from Westminster here to the island of Ireland. That's what we did. And if you look at Sinn Féin's record since the last Westminster election, from the deal which I did with Ian Paisley, through to the Hillsborough Agreement, to the transfer of policing and justice powers. That's all about taking those powers. And we want to see, because the big focus...
So why are you standing at all? Why did you just not leave it and stand in the Assembly in the council elections and leave the Westminster?
Well, I'll come to that in a second. Let me finish the point I'm making. More and more we need to see fiscal powers coming here, but we need to see the ability to develop our own economic interests here. But let me make this point. These other parties who are arguing at the moment about the merits of Westminster, who are exaggerating their own involvement there, their own importance, their own influence there, and even their own attendance there. The SDLP, for example, 5%.
No, but that's just not right, Mr. Adams. I've looked up these figures. The figures from one of the YouGov sites says that Alistair MacDonald was there for 20.9% of votes in the last 5 years, Eddie McGrady for 18.3%, and Mark Durkin for 29%.
The worst.
Among the lowest. But you're saying 5%, that's just not right.
5% in the last year.
Ah, but over 5 years, over the life of the Parliament.
Last year, February. But let me give you another example. The SDLP make a big rah-rah about needing to be there to stop cuts and to stop all sorts of other measures. The budget, the big deal of the year, just a few weeks ago, 3 or 4 days of debate, 6 votes, not one SDLP representative there, not one contribution from the SDLP there, not one vote from the SDLP there. So we are active abstentionists, Noel. They are lazy abstentionists.
They say that they were there voting against the 10p tax rate voting for improving tax credits, against the abolition of childcare voucher. These are the things which have a daily impact on people's lives, not non-jury trials and 42-day detention.
Voting for 28-day detentions, giving away...
Against 42-day detention.
Voting for 28.
It's compromise, isn't it?
It isn't compromise. Nobody should be detained without trial. I was one of the
lot
people
of interest to most people in Northern Ireland. Most people are interested in the money in their pocket.
Well,
these are the things, the social issues that the SDLP say they are therefore fighting day in, day out.
Well, the SDLP former leader, Mark Durkan, said you could not lead the party from Westminster, and I agree with him on that. He's now decided to take a career shift to Westminster.
It's not the question, of course, whether you can lead a party. The party is whether it's of any point being in Westminster. They say yes, well, you say no.
And we receive a mandate, and the voters have, over the last number of elections, have had the opportunity to vote on these matters, and they've increasingly voted for us, because it isn't just a matter of not attending Westminster, because they don't attend. That's clear.
They do. I've quoted you the figures.
Well, I know, but they exaggerate all of this.
No, these are not their figures. These are figures on government websites.
But we have a strategy, and you can see the fruits of that strategy in the last 5 years. Just look at it. 5 years ago, in the debate that we were having, you know, if I had, which I did, predict a number of things happening, they've happened. We produce, we deliver, and in the next 5 years, we want to have the opportunity, if people refresh our mandates, if they renew our mandates, to continue this work. And we want to focus on the energy.
But you don't give a voice to the unionists in Fermanagh South Tyrone or in the other constituencies which you represent.
With respect, I represent a constituency, and I'm seeking a new mandate for that, which has some of the heartland, proud unionist heartland. And I do represent those people. I don't pretend to represent them on the union.
But I represent
them. Excuse me. These people have been abandoned by the main unionist party. And by the way, the other unionist parties' record of attendance is really no greater than the SDLP's.
You talk about the leverage you have in Downshire. Where is that leverage now? Devolution is complete. What government leader, should it be Tory, Lib Dem or Labour, is going to pick up the phone when it's Gerry Adams and say, get over here quick, Gerry, I know there's something
the next big negotiation, I mean, the UUP led by David Trimble and the SDLP led by Mark Durkan went off to do a deal with the Treasury and came back with a tax on water charges. We went off to do a deal on policing and justice and came back with £800 million pounds.
With the DUP,
yes, I'm not disputing that. Yeah, no, of course I'm not disputing that.
So where is Sinn Féin's
But the next big deal is going to be the block grant. And we're not on our own, because what we're trying to do is to have joined up government. We've had 3 years, for all the hiccups and all the difficulties, we've had 3 years of unbroken government. Now, the more we get those working relationships going, and it isn't just about dealing with Britain or dealing with London, we've also brought forward, and are working with the Irish government, infrastructural measures. We've brought forward through our ministries, equality. We've brought in social clauses, whether it's the road, the A8 to Larne, or whether it's the A5 the whole way up into Strabane, Donegal and into Derry. Those are all workings out on this island between the people here, represented in the Assembly, and the people represented in Leinster House.
You talked about you pushing your agenda. Just a flavour of things from the last few manifestos. You wanted a green paper on unity from the Irish government. You wanted more cross-border bodies. You wanted voting rights in presidential elections for people in the north. You wanted representation in the Oireachtas. You wanted all Ireland units in all government departments. You wanted a referendum on unity. None of that has happened.
Well, all the Sinn Féin departments here have all Ireland directorates. And we continue to work, and a lot of the good work that was done in Hillsborough.
But they don't in Dublin.
Well, but that's still work in progress, and you know.
But these are from 2003.
I know that.
7 years later, you've made no progress.
Well, don't say we haven't made no progress. And some of them we have made gradual progress. I mean, particularly on the issue of the Irish language, we've made very considerable progress in relation to that.
Where's the Irish Language Act that was you said you had promised to you at St Andrews?
Well, the Irish Language Act is going to be here. I have no doubt at all about that. The Minister at the moment, Nelson McCausland, is bringing forward a strategy.
A strategy is not an act.
Oh, I know that. Come here, I know that, Noel. I know that, and I have met for my sins with all of the unionists on this issue.
So that's another promise which you haven't fulfilled.
No. We didn't make promises. We made commitments, and we deliver on those commitments. I've met with the Welsh Secretary. Martin McGuinness met with the First Minister in Scotland on this. This issue was rehearsed at the BIC meetings and will be so again. And I met with the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Dublin and the Minister of Arts, Culture and the Gaeltacht in Dublin. So we're working on these issues, but what we brought forward was sizable funding for the Irish language, and we will continue to do that. And I just want to say something about the Irish language, if I may. It needs depoliticised. It's our common heritage, and it needs depoliticised.
Some people will laugh at you saying that, but you've talked about leadership here. Now, your own leadership, allegations of a cover-up over your brother's involvement in Sinn Féin when you believed him to be a sex offender, further revelations from a former trusted colleague about your membership and leadership of the IRA, your failure to make Sinn Féin a vote winner in the Republic. Are these your dying days as a leader?
Well, give me a chance, no. First of all, some of these issues are very serious issues. Some of them are subject to court proceedings. Some of them are deeply troubling family issues, which I've had to handle, and other people in my family.
But there's a political element to them as well, you accept?
And no, I'm going forward. I'm putting myself forward. I don't have to. I've done it as a voluntary reaction, and the electorate will make their judgment on all of these
What's your view? Do you think people who vote Sinn Féin don't care whether or not you admit to being a leader of the IRA?
It's not an issue. It might be a media issue. It certainly is an issue for victims of the IRA, and I appreciate that. But what I do as part of a collective leadership, and our leadership is rounded, it's grounded, it has depth and breadth to it, has a representativeness to it, and it's also very, very experienced. And we want to continue to bring that experience, that vision, and that strategic experience into the next 5 years.
There's been something like 20 resignations from Sinn Féin, north and south of the border, in the last 2.5 years, 7 of them in Dublin, which was always a big stronghold of yours, of course. Is the project stalled?
The project, I think, right across the jurisdiction in the south is going okay. It obviously has some challenges in Dublin, but all of the parties have had high-level resignations. George Lee is one of the most famous ones. Deirdre, I forget her surname, from the Green Party. A range of people here resigning as well. Now, you'd rather people didn't resign, you know, but people resign from the BBC, people resign from football teams, people resign from all sorts of social associations, including political parties.
Because they say, or many of them say, Sinn Féin is not, it doesn't have a central focus anymore. It's not, doesn't know where it's going.
Because what we are, if nothing else, is a party which is about equality, and a party which is about a united Ireland. And we're the only party, whatever about the spoofing from all these other parties, which is substantially organised across the island of Ireland, and which is also delivering on our vision.
The United Ireland project hasn't been moved an inch forward in 7 or 10 years.
Oh yes, it has. We have the DUP at this moment sitting in cross-border institutions, meeting with their ministers, as they should, because it's sensible, practical, pragmatic politics by the DUP. Now, no one could have envisaged 10, 15 years ago that we would have progressed in all of these matters. The Good Friday Agreement is a settled matter.
Gerry Adams, thank you very much.
Thanks, Noel.
And now for our weekly look at what's been happening on the campaign trail, I'm joined by our political correspondent, Martina Purdy. Martina, you can't get away from these pacts, can you? South Belfast has been a pretty amazing week.
Yes, it's been dominating the news. We know now that Alistair MacDonald isn't going to be facing a nationalist rival in his constituency because Sinn Féin announced they were withdrawing, saying they wanted to help him win the seat. Of course, Margaret Ritchie said, "We don't need your help, thank you very much," and accused Sinn Féin of sectarianising the race. Funny, a lot of the pundits now are speculating about Sinn Féin's motives. Obviously, for Man of South Tyrone, winning that against a single unionist candidate is a motivating factor for Sinn Féin in withdrawing from South Belfast. But it also frees up workers for the election. And there's lots of speculation, are they moving them into North Belfast, where they maybe have hopes for Gerry Kelly?
And on the unionist side, then, an extraordinary offer in South Belfast from Jimmy Spratt.
That's right, the DUP making Paula Bradshaw, the Ulster Unionist candidate, an offer she did refuse in the end, which was, would you like to be an Assembly member? And we had the Ulster Unionist leader, Sir Reg MP, saying, you know, he's not even sure it's legal, but he also spurned the offer. And I did hear one voter in South Belfast saying to me the other day, I look forward to the DUP coming to my door canvassing for the Assembly, because I'll be asking them, are they going to be giving the seat away in the future, and who to?
A hostage to fortune, of course. Now, volcanic ash has been affecting everyone, not least our political parties.
That's right. The Conservatives in particular have not been able to fly over here to help the Ulster Unionists, their political partners in this alliance. There's lots of speculation that the Conservative candidates will come over next week, but we know at least one of them, Owen Paterson, wasn't able to come along. There had also been speculation that the Alliance Party postponed their manifesto launch this week because perhaps they didn't have any Liberal Democrats being able to make it, and being an ally of the Liberal Democrats might be a bit of a vote winner this week, given the popularity
I'm
of
going to be
Nick
asking
Clegg.
David Ford about that in just a minute, but do you think there is a bounce in this for the Alliance Party?
It's hard to say, really, because the Alliance Party haven't made much of the fact that their sister party are the Liberal Democrats in this particular election. And I'm assured by the Alliance spokesman that the manifesto launch was delayed not because of a Liberal Democrat coming over, but because the SDLP had launched their manifesto.
On manifesto launches, the DUP had a rather unusual setting this week.
Yes, they chose the Ulster Hall for their setting. Now, I didn't go along to that manifesto where the DUP leader said that he wanted to win 10 seats. But I did watch some of the coverage that was coming in, and what struck me was that was really, if you're looking at a gladiatorial contest between reporters and politicians, I think that was a big win for the DUP because it was very well orchestrated. You had the reporters coming up to ask questions with the microphone, a couple of tough questions in there, but Nigel Dodds, who was chairing the press conference, deflected any difficulties supporting Peter Robinson, and Peter Robinson would come up, he'd make his comment, and the party was cheering and clapping, by which time the reporter didn't have a chance to have a comeback question. It was probably pretty well psyched out.
Do you think it was designed to intimidate the reporters?
I don't know. I think it was just good PR. I mean, the DUP are quite good at managing their public relations, and I'm sure it was well thought out, but of course they would say it was simply
The way it happened.
the way it happened.
White coats for the SDLP.
Yes, I did go to the SDLP manifesto launch this week. It was at a West Belfast factory, and when I came through the doors, I was handed a white coat and a cap, and I noticed there was already reporters in the reception area wearing them. Of course, I immediately protested that white wasn't my color, and they insisted if I wanted into the press conference, which was through the factory floor, I had to wear it, so on it went. And then other reporters arrived, including downtown political editor Eamon Malley, who also joined the protest, but I told him it was futile, so he was helped on into his white coat by Diana Rusk of the Irish News. Next thing you know, the politicians came down the stairs all in white coats, looking rather embarrassed, I have to say, and the reporters were joking that perhaps Danny Morrison, the former Sinn Féin publicity director, had encouraged them into this factory with the white coats. Margaret Ritchie, the SDLP leader, when she saw the cameras, immediately whipped her little hat off. But everyone was relieved that we only had to have them on for a few minutes, and when the press conference started in another part of the factory, the white coats came off. But we did have Alex Atwood joking that they were coming for Gerry Adams.
Coming for Gerry Adams. Okay, now there's a leaders' debate, of course, the first time in this election, although the BBC runs leadership debates all the time, of course. And there's been some fussing about who sits where.
Well, talking to party sources, I'm told that there was a debate about the debate tonight, and one of the debating points was who stands next to Gerry Adams, because I'm told the moderator will be in the middle. Margaret Ritchie wasn't keen to stand next to Gerry Adams because she didn't want the impression that it was a unionist against the nationalists. And neither unionist leader, I'm told, was particularly keen to stand next to Gerry Adams. In the end, Sir Reg MP is standing next to him, and Peter Robinson will be standing next to Margaret Ritchie.
I suppose no one asked Gerry Adams who he would like to sit beside.
He's probably just happy to be there. It was a time when he had to have his own separate studio.
Indeed, Martina, thank you very much indeed. That's where we leave it this time round. Next week, the last hearts and minds before the election. We'll hear from the DUP leader Peter Robinson and the TUV's Jim Allister, separately, of course. Unmissable stuff. Goodbye for now.
Here, do you know what I need? A really good discussion about politics.
Some carry on this week. There are some phrases you will just never ever hear, like, shh, I want to hear this party election broadcast, and Tim, would you like to co-host the One Show with Christine? And now there's a new one, Alex Maskey, MP, and there was a chance of him actually winning South Belfast, the same way there's a chance of Glasgow Rangers fans having a whip round to pay off Neil Lennon's debts. Meanwhile, I've weighed up all the issues, health, education, jobs, and I've decided that I'm voting for the candidate who can guarantee more volcanic eruptions in Iceland. Yes, thanks to the airline chaos, I got some of the best fares ever. Cork, London, I even got a trip to the Holy Land, and I never go near Queen's University. I was like Matt Baggett and Cross McLean. It was lovely to be there for 5 minutes, but I'll not be back in a hurry. That'll be £12.50.